Well, no, I don't want to.
Yes.
No.
Just, I'll edit it out, I promise. Yeah.
What is up, everybody? Stop laughing at me.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll edit it out, I promise.
What is up, everybody? This is Mrs. Rapertis. Welcome to Unit 5. Why are you laughing?
What is up, everybody? Mrs. Rapertis here.
Oh, whatever.
Try again. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
What is up, everybody? Mrs. Rapertis here. Welcome. Stop! I hear you laughing in the background.
You know I'm not going to edit this out either.
Yes.
What is up, everybody? Mr. Curtis here. Welcome to Unit 5, Part 2C. Again, this is Unit 5, Part 2. It's all about the Industrial Revolution. So we had an A video, a B video, and this is the C video. It's on solutions to the Industrial Revolution issues. I call this the Isms, 1750 to 1900. Keep in mind that throughout the Industrial Revolution, we've really been focused on a lot of the negative aspects of it. There's been some positive stuff, but really there's been a lot of negativity that comes out of this and just some issues. This is really just a review from stuff we've talked about, some things that have come up that have been really kind of on the negative side of things. One is that negative side of urbanization, which is the living conditions, the pollution, the idea of people living in cramped spaces when we haven't caught up technologically kind of in the middle of this period with the inventions that are going to be created where, for example, like electricity and toilet and modernized plumbing, where people are living in kind of urban areas that are really just kind of dirty, causing cancer, just all kinds of issues. Anyway, also we have overpopulation in the cities, which kind of connects to urbanization. Also, we have working conditions. We have issues over wages where people are not getting paid much. We have long work hours, 15-hour work days. We have lack of safety in these factories, which also includes the pollution in the factories, no protective railings, no safety features, and we also have child labor. We have kids as young as 6 or 7 years old working in the factories, working in coal mines. And don't forget, there are also not only we have factories going on, we also have these coal mines, and we have this growing inequality. We have these rich entrepreneurs, these capitalists who are making an insane amount of money, and these working class people are making less. So there's this huge discrepancy between the wealthy entrepreneurs and the working class people. Also, we have disruption of family life. This concept of working 15 hours a day, all family members working, really hurts the family unit or the family structure. So the question becomes, and what people are going to start asking themselves midway through this Industrial Revolution is, how do we solve these problems? What are we going to get into to do this? And the solution that some people come up with, and there's no universal agreements, these are a couple different solutions that pop up, are called the isms. So there's 3 different isms here that we're going to kind of focus on. The first one is called liberalism. And when I say liberalism, if you are familiar with United States politics, please don't get our concept of liberal versus conservative confused with this liberalism. There are some things that stay the same throughout between this liberalism and liberalism today, but for the most part, it's not the same thing. So I don't even want to talk about what it means in the United States today because I don't want to confuse you. So let's just focus on what liberalism means and what people thought the solution should be to some of these problems, or should there even be a solution. So in this case, liberalism in this context really refers to what has been going on since the start of the Industrial Revolution. It's the belief of hands-off, which means free market, a capitalist economy. This would be Adam Smith's theory of laissez-faire capitalism. These people who are liberals or believe in liberalism during the Industrial Revolution are going to be against any government involvement in what's going on in factory conditions. Whether it's social programs or economic programs, they are against it. They don't believe that the government should be creating programs to help poor people, or the government should make laws that create minimum wage, because that is getting involved in businesses. Instead, liberals believe that the economy should take care of itself. For example, instead of creating minimum wage, people who believed in liberalism at this time would say, if you don't want to work for, I don't know, let's say $1 an hour, then don't work for $1 an hour. The government shouldn't get involved and say, hey, we should have a $10 minimum wage. That's ridiculous. If you don't want to work for $1 an hour, then don't work for it. And if no one wants to work for $1 an hour, then businesses will be forced through the free market to raise their minimum wage or raise their wages in order to get people to work for it. This is really popular among factory owners. You can imagine if the government stays out of business, therefore the factory owners can make more money as a result. So really what we're seeing here is this is more popular with factory owners. This is very Adam Smith. And the last piece this is, and this is still a concept I feel like a lot of people believe, not a lot, but a decent amount of people believe in today, is that poor people are poor because they don't work hard enough. And this is part of liberalism. The idea that the factory owners are rich because they worked hard. That rich people in our country today, in the United States, are rich because they worked hard, they took chances, and they busted their butt, and it made them money. There's a theory back then and today is that the working class people or poor people are poor because of their own faults. It's their own issues. It's because they didn't work hard enough. And depending upon your personal viewpoint in the 2000s over whether or not this is true, and it also connects to what political party you are today in the United States, that if you don't work hard enough, it's your fault, or if you don't work hard, if you're poor, it's because of the situation that presented itself to you. So we got liberalism here, government kind of staying out, let the free market decide for itself, no government programs, laissez-faire, hands off, free market economy under Adam Smith. There's another theory that comes up that's really quite the opposite of liberalism. This is what we call socialism. And if you paid attention to the Democratic primaries time in 2016, you might have heard this term socialism thrown around. Bernie Sanders, who's running, claimed to be a socialist Democrat, or he said he was in favor to a certain degree of socialism programs. And this is the theory that the government owns and promotes ownership of industry. So they own a lot of the industry production methods, whether it's the coal industry or oil industry or gas industry. The government owns a lot of that stuff. But the resources that come from that, the capital or the money that comes from the sale of the coal or the sale of the gas or the sale of the oil, those resources go to benefit people in the country. So for example, you take the profit, and instead of the oil executive taking the money for himself and buying him lots of fancy stuff, the government takes those resources and then provides programs for the people. Those socialist programs could include free education. It could include money or assistance for poor people. It could include, and this is coming back to free education, free college education. It could include free health care for all people in this country where you don't have to pay for it. And this idea of socialism was a way to cure these problems in the Industrial Revolution. If we take the profits from the businesses, if we take a lot of that money and then provide programs for the working class people, provide health care, provide insurance, provide like if they get unemployed, something like a safety net, we would say, so they have money, that would be socialism. This idea takes off in some countries. For example, today we have in the United States Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security and unemployment insurance. Those would be considered, if you went back to the 1850s, socialist programs. So we do have some of this in the United States today. Again, coming back to modern stuff, if you are a Republican, you probably don't like a lot of these socialist type programs. Democrats are more in favor of these, but this idea comes up during this time. Just a couple things here to point out, and this is someone who is a socialist would tell you this. There are some absurdities and contradictions in capitalism. For example, here we go. If the U.S. land were divided by wealth, 1% would own this, because we have such a lot of people say that the inequality of wealth today in the United States, this is synthesis, is very similar to what it was in the Industrial Revolution. So 1% of the people would own this if it was divided by wealth, 9% would own this, 30% would own this, and 40% would own this little red dot right here. In Congress, 50% of the people in Congress are millionaires, when only 1% of people in the United States are. In this country, there are 22 empty homes for every homeless person. Think about that. There are 22 empty homes for every homeless person. If you add up, there's 49 million people living in poverty in this country today, and 97 million people who are near poverty, one paycheck away or lack of paycheck from being in poverty. So 146 million people, that's half of the U.S. population, are close to living in poverty. Anyway, that's just kind of some side notes of what someone who is socialist would say. This is the inequality that exists, and we need more socialist programs. Also, we have one other theory that comes up. This is called communism or Marxism. This is an economic theory. It was developed by a guy named Karl Marx. This is his picture down here. He wrote a famous pamphlet along with his buddy Friedrich Engels called the Communist Manifesto. Basically, he was a historian and sociologist, and he said he studied history. He said the working conditions are so horrible in Europe that eventually the workers are going to overthrow the owners, in a worldwide revolution. So the workers around the world are going to rise up and overthrow the owners, and they're going to set up a society where everyone is equal. No money, no private property, where every single person is going to own everything together. And at the same time, this is kind of weird, but everyone who owns everything will also own nothing. So everyone shares everything. Everyone owns everything. Private property doesn't exist. And that's what the workers, after they overthrow the owners in this revolution, they will set up a society where it's equal. Because if the workers overthrow me, the owner, and they put one of them in charge, like I was in charge, the person who becomes in charge, that worker, is going to be like a factory owner or like a dictator. So we need where every single person is equal. This idea of communism and Marxism doesn't really take off in Western Europe, because here's really what happens in Europe. With all these theories coming out, in the West, no revolution is actually going to occur. What we're going to see in the next time period, in 1900 to present synthesis, is that some of this idea of communism is going to take off in places like China and Cuba and North Korea and other countries around the world. Russia especially, where they're going to have these communist revolutions. Most of the Western European and US, most of these countries are going to enact reforms to help workers, which in some ways sounds a little socialist, and it goes against the free market economy. One, they're going to many laws to create safety standards, which kind of makes sense. You think that businesses should have safety standards for their workers. Child labor laws, where it says you can't, if you're under the age of, whether it's 14 or whether it's 12, you are not allowed to work. Eventually, in the United States today, these labor laws obviously still exist, because if you're under the age of 16, you're really not supposed to work, and you need parental permission to work, and you also need a physical to show that you're healthy enough. Also, we have the legalization of unions, and unions are when workers join together collectively to demand better rights, better working conditions, better wages. If you know someone who's a teacher, a firefighter, a nurse, a police officer, a football player, a baseball player, they are in a union. That union negotiates contracts to the management in order to get the best conditions possible. So last thing, one kind of side of this, other movements are going to come out of this industrial revolution, which are connected to the Enlightenment. One, we're going to have increased suffrage. More men are going to get the right to vote, and women are going to start pushing for that right. We see the beginning of feminism in this period. As we have women working in factories and sacrificing for their family, they're going to start also asking for the right to vote. And when I say more men get the right to vote, this could include people who were formerly slaves, like in the United States. So by 1900, black people theoretically are supposed to have the right to vote. Also, in many countries, when they created democracy, only landowning men could vote. Now, by the end of this period, if you're a working class person and you don't own land, you're also given the right to vote. So you have more people voting. Also, we are going to have the abolition of forced labor. With this industrialization, we really don't need these huge farms and plantations, or we don't need serfdom anymore in Russia. So we're going to see the end of forced labor. They're going to use these Enlightenment ideas and say, we really need to end this stuff. So a lot of information here. Feel free to go back to this, review it, ask questions. We'll go over some of this more in class, but that's all I got. Little outtakes, and have a good day.
It's recording, yeah. Come on.
What is up, everybody? This is Mrs. Stop laughing. Do it again.